Good afternoon, class. My name is Celina Martinez, and I chose the Stanford Prison Experiment. Okay, so the mission. Stanford Prison Experiment was led by Philip Zimbardo to investigate the psychological effects of power and authority. Zimbardo was interested in exploring the ways in which social influence can contribute to extreme behaviors. Key focus. Identify how individuals behave when given power or subjected to authority. Based off the observations, to test a hypothesis and idea and how variables relate to each other, and to provide cause and effect under a controlled condition. So, who is Philip Zimbardo? He is the primary researcher. A little background of him: he was born in New York City, March 23rd, 1933, into a second generation Sicilian American immigrant family. He was the first member from his family to attend college. He completed his BA with a triple major in psychology, sociology, anthropology, and he completed his MS and PhD in psychology from Yale University in 1959. He moved around and taught in different universities, and in 1968, he joined the Stanford University, where he taught for 50 years. Zimbardo was well known for psychology courses. He authored many psychology textbooks. Throughout all his teaching career, he won many awards, including an Emmy for a television series. Here we have Philip Zimbardo in his younger years, some pictures captured with his colleagues, making headlines, and his wife. So, why a study? Zimbardo had a long-term research interest. He became fascinated with the uniquely intense psychological context and forces that the mind was capable of. He wanted to specifically examine how situational factors can influence people's behavior rather than individual personalities. What causes the ordinary individual to act in unexpectedly cruel and abusive ways when assigned a role of power? The start. In 1971, Zimbardo and his colleagues created the experiment: prison guards versus prisoners. A mock prison was set up in the basement of Stanford University's psychology building. A newspaper ad calling for volunteers on a study of psychological effects of a prison life. They selected 24 male undergraduate students out of 75 volunteers, all based off no criminal backgrounds, no psychological issues, and no significant medical conditions. The volunteers agreed on a 2-week experiment at $15 a day, and the prisoners signed a contract agreement for the psychological study of prison life. That was the extent of knowing what was to come for the prisoners. Next came the prep. The setting included 3 6-by-9-foot prison cells. The doors were from old lab rooms and replaced with specially made doors with steel bars and cell numbers to mock the real thing. Each cell had 2 prisoners and 2 cots. Other rooms across the cells were for the jail guards and wardens. One tiny space was designated as the solitary confinement room. A small space was for the prison yard. Out of the 24 volunteers, they were randomly assigned to either prisoner or guard group by tossing a coin. Prisoners were to remain in the mock prison 24 hours a day, while the guards were assigned to work 3-man teams for 8-hour shifts. Guards were allowed to return home after their shift until their next shift. Guards dressed in all identical khaki uniforms, wore mirrored sunglasses to prevent eye contact, wore whistles around their necks, and carried a nightstick. Intercom systems allowed the guards to secretly bug the cells to monitor what the prisoners discussed and to make public announcements to the prisoners. At one end of the hallway was a small opening through which the guards could videotape and record the events that took place. The day came, the arrival. The students, aka prisoners, were arrested by city police at their homes, searched, and read their rights. Blindfolded and driven to the Stanford County Jail, aka the mock prison, for further processing and fingerprinting. The prisoners were brought into the jail one at a time and greeted by the warden. The first 5 were charged were with burglary, and the other 4 were charged with armed robbery. Each prisoner was systematically searched and stripped naked and sprayed down to wash away any germs. Prisoners were then issued a uniform replicating a short dress with no underclothes. They were issued rubber sandals for footwear, and all prisoners covered their hair with a nylon stocking. On the front and back of their shirt was the ID number. A heavy chain was placed on the right ankle and locked and to be worn at all times. Prisoners expected some harassment, privacy invasion, and civil rights violated. A prison diet, all noted in their informed consent agreement when they volunteered. Here we have the city police arriving to the facility with the prisoners. Here in these pictures, we have the guards taking over the prisoners from the city police to continue with the booking procedures and process. They still have the bandanas on. They're putting the nylon stockings on, locking up the right ankle. Next came enforcing the law. The guards had no training on how to be guards. They were free to do what they thought was necessary to maintain the law and order, but with limits. The guards commanded respect from the prisoners, and the guards made up their own rules. Rules being some of them like remaining silent during rest periods, eating at meal times, and keeping the prison clean. The guards were warned that the potential seriousness of this mission and the possible dangers. Philip Zimbardo placed himself in the role of prison superintendent alongside a student assistant, David, in the administrative role of prison warden. Zimbardo also solicited the help of Carlo Prescott, an ex-convict who had previously spent 17 years in the San Quentin, to help direct and construct a prison-like environment. In these next few slides, I'm going to describe a little bit of what went on in those days. There was so much that I found, and there's a lot of situations that took place between the guards and the prisoners, but I'm going to go ahead and just give a brief little explanation. So on day 1, both prisoners and guards were adjusting to their roles in the situation. The group displayed hesitation and some awkwardness, according to Zimbardo. At some point in the night and regular occasion, the prisoners were rudely awakened from the sleep by the guards blasting whistles to do counts. Prisoners needed to get familiar with their ID numbers, and guards were becoming more confident in exercising that control over them. Some prisoners weren't cooperating, and the guards were hesitant how to assist authority, but the night shift guards were more comfortable with their role, and one guard in particular, who eventually went by the nickname John Wayne, he was enjoying using his authority when the prisoners made mistakes. This led to direct confrontation between the guards and the prisoners. Common form of physical punishments were push-ups, stepping, or sitting on their backs while prisoners did the push-ups. So by day 2, the prisoners started to become angry fast with the way that the guards were treating them. This caused the prisoners to start formulating plans for rebellion. Prisoners started to taunt the guards and cuss out the guards, complain, and started to refuse the following orders. Without warning, on the second morning, the prisoners ripped off their stockings and ID numbers and barricaded themselves inside the cells by putting their beds against the door. Some prisoners became submissive and obeyed orders from the guards, while others prisoners were calling out, "This is time has come for violent revolution." So on day 3, the guards started to call in reinforcements. The 3 guards on duty called the 3 guards who were on standby at home. As they met up, they all decided that fighting force with force was going to be the answer. They got a fire extinguisher and they sprayed into the cells. They broke into the barricaded cells and stripped the prisoners naked. They took away their beds and they forced the ringleader into solitary confinement. The guards harassed and intimidated the prisoners until they gained control of the situation. At this point, by days 4 and 5, the prisoners were starting to get agitated, uncomfortable. They were wanting to be, some of them wanted to be released early due to the amount of psychological abuse that they were demonstrating. And I think the guards or Zimbardo had to find a way to calm the entire situation down. So they initiated a parents and friends night where they were able to come visit the jail, but they were manipulated into thinking that the situations weren't as harsh as they were. They weren't really being transparent or, telling the truth and all the details. On day 4, Zimbardo invited a Catholic priest to the facility who was also a real prison chaplain to assess the realism of the prison environment. All prisoners agreed to visiting the priest except one. He insisted on a doctor instead of priest. Zimbardo was also confronted by a psychologist after she examined the behavior of the prisoners as troubling. The entire situation was just spiraling out of control. The priest let parents know that the status of the prisoners in the facility was in. By night 5, parents were requesting lawyers to bail out their sons. So the last day comes, which is day 6. Zimbardo calls off the experiment due to the brutality the guards were inflicting on the prisoners. I think he finally realized and took into the consideration what his colleagues and the other psychologists had to say. The severity of the harassment that was taking place was not okay. Zimbardo's guards quickly adapted to the guard role and adopted the harsh authoritarian roles. So this proved that the psychological effects of authority and power can have over a person. From one of the prisoners, one of his responses was, "The mock prison became a living hell." So the overall results that Zimbardo came up with was that the SPE went through at least 3 phases. The first one being the settling in phase, 2, the rebellion phase, and 3, the tyranny phase. There was a lot of controversy between the experiment, the ethical concerns due to disturbing levels of abuse and psychological distress it caused. Others argue that the behaviors were influenced by role playing rather than real life situations. Here we have some pictures of the guards making the prisoners line up, do push ups. They have their heads covered, blindfolded. Here again, we have some pictures of the guards blindfolding the prisoners and covering their heads. This bottom picture here, colored picture. Some of the prisoners don't look so happy. Here I listed some fun facts. A couple of them caught my attention, like Zimbardo apologizing for any suffering that he did or may caused in one of his later books called The Lucifer Effect. And recently, Zimbardo passed away in October of 2024. He was 91 years old. And there you have it. That is my presentation on the Stanford prison experiment. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.